Hi, I'm Chris Sarandon, and this is Cooking by Heart, where we revisit the vivid memories of the food we grew up with.
Just the best.
I couldn't believe the tastes and the flavors.
Lydia Bastianich. Hi, Chris. Susan Sarandon.
And the people and the stories attached to that time in our lives.
I was the one sort of like mommy dearest.
My guest today is Brad Dourif, whose extraordinary and versatile career has crossed any number of genres. From his Oscar-nominated and Golden Globe-winning performance in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, to his role as Charles Lee Ray and the voice of Chucky in the Child's Play franchise, to his portrayal of Grima Wormtongue in the Lord of the Rings film series, and other film roles, including roles in Ragtime, the David Lynch, Dune, and his Blue Velvet, Mississippi Burning, Rob Zombie's remake of Halloween and its sequels, and many others. His work on television includes his Emmy-nominated performance as Doc Cochran in HBO's Deadwood, as well as guest starring appearances on Fringe, X-Files, Star Trek Voyager, Babylon 5, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., as well as reprising his role as Chucky in the TV series adaptation of the Child's Play franchise, Chucky. I'm proud to welcome Brad Dourif to Cooking by Heart.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Brad.
My fellow West Virginian.
Welcome. Yes, well, that's one of our degrees of separation, and the other degree of separation is that we were both, I think, nominated in the same year.
Yep. Both
for the Oscar.
Lost.
Yes, to George Burns.
Yep.
I remember it well. Were you at the ceremony?
Yes. So were you.
Yeah, I was there too. Did we run into each other? But
yes,
there goes
we
my
did.
memory.
Your wife at the time came up to me and introduced us.
Ah, well, that's Susan all over.
Yeah. She was great.
All right, so the way we normally start off Cooking by Heart is that we begin with Providence. Now, I know your hometown well because my brother went to college there, but can you tell our listeners and our viewers where you were born and raised?
I was born in Huntington, West Virginia, and I was raised in Huntington. I was raised in Huntington. We could just leave it at that.
What kind of town? It
was a very small city. It's smaller than, I've gone back and, when I dream about Huntington, I can go anywhere, but frankly, you really can. You can walk anywhere in Huntington.
Yeah. I remember when we went up to visit, my brother went to Marshall University, which is in Huntington, and you went there for a while too, didn't you?
Just a bit. A smidge, and that was it.
Right. Now, your parents, were they both from there?
My mom was born in New York. My father, my original father, was might have been born in Huntington. I don't know. Mm. He's French. Almost everybody else of his siblings were born in France.
Right. And your mom's background?
She was theater.
Mm. So who was the cook in the family?
Very early on, it was a bit of a mess. My father died when I was 3.
Oh, wow.
Mom had to work. We had people that were coming in and taking care of us. So, but I don't remember the food being great. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I really hated eating.
Well, not an unusual experience
particularly Brussels sprouts. Oh. And then it kind of got worse.
Worse than Brussels sprouts?
We had a rule: you had to stand up if you didn't finish your dinner. And when we had Brussels sprouts, I would stand up until and I would win. I'd go to bed with not eaten.
You'd go to bed standing.
I'd go to bed standing, yeah.
And who did the cooking then when your mom wasn't around? Do you say people who helped out?
Some lady did the cooking, but she was terrible. Started my life, I did not like food. I'd never really been a foodie, but at the beginning, it was a lot of frozen vegetables. Yep. I remember that you get them in these kind of wax boxes.
Yes.
Then there was the pressure of having to eat it all.
How many siblings?
There were 6 of us in all.
This was with the father who passed away?
Well, then I had a stepfather.
Ah, okay.
Who had 2 children. Dinner was a bit of a mess until my mom realized that candlelight calmed everybody down a bit.
Interesting.
So we had candlelight dinners.
This is an original concept on Cooking by Heart. Nobody's ever talked about candlelighted dinner.
Yeah. Well, when you got 6 kids, it can get a little loud.
Yeah, exactly. What was the conversation like around the table? Do you remember?
I think, once it got more organized, and I can remember, we were asked questions, and everybody got to say what they did, how their day was.
And who was the interlocutor? One of the parents? Your mom? Your stepdad?
Yes, or my stepfather.
Was the conversation about anything in particular, or you got to sort of say your piece in terms of what your day was like?
You got to pick.
And as time went on, was your mom then at home all the time once she remarried?
Yes, she was. Well, yes and no. They were constantly. My stepfather was a very highly ranked amateur golfer, so he went on a lot of golf things that he would do. He was on the Walker Cup teams. Yeah, he was captain, and I think he was undefeated. He never lost.
And this was in the day when amateur golfing was much more. It was like amateur tennis players, that they were much more in the public eye than they are now. Now it's basically it's all about the pro tour, and every once in a while an amateur will get some ink in the papers, but essentially it's all about the pro tour.
Yes. But in those days it was more, the Walker Cup matches were, a bigger deal.
Yeah, they were like the Ryder Cup is now. Yeah. Because I remember very specifically. And when I was a kid, we used to go to did he ever play at the Greenbrier?
Of course. We had a summer house in White Sulphur Springs, and we were given carte blanche. The whole family could go and play tennis and use the pool.
Yeah, for my listeners and for my viewers, White Sulphur Springs, the Greenbrier Hotel, sort of a legendary luxury kind of old world hotel with great luxury amenities. Yeah. And there were any number of golf tournaments that came through there. I remember when I was a kid, my brother was the
West Virginia amateur,
but also there. Pros, because I remember I have photographs in my album of Sam Snead and Ben Hogan, who were the great golfers of that day.
Sam Snead was the golfer in residence there.
Right, from West Virginia. And the Greenbrier Hotel is in a place called White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, in beautiful sort of bucolic setting, gorgeous sort of countryside around it. We used to go there all the time. It was a great place.
Yeah.
So you guys had you had summers at the Greenbrier.
Mm-hmm.
During the year you were in Huntington going to public schools. What were your school lunches like? Who made your lunches?
The help. We had help at that point.
What did they consist of?
In those days, all I wanted was peanut butter and jelly. I mean, that was it. I mean, if I went to a really expensive restaurant in the beginning of the wooing stage and we could have anything we wanted, I would choose peanut butter and jelly sandwich,
At the restaurant?
At the restaurant. That was what I would want. But, kids are finicky about food.
I was very finicky, too. We've had a lot of these conversations about separating things on a plate so that nothing touched. I was very sort of possessed by the fact that I didn't want any of my food to touch, and I had to eat things sort of equally all the way around the plate so that I finished at the same time. And during that period, so your mom is at home most of the time. Your dad is going forth every once in a while or fairly often for tournaments. So, and were you guys traveling with him?
No, my mom did.
So then you were at home with the help.
he really liked photography. Took a lot of pictures when we were young, and he also shot 8mm film, and we have a lot of it. And we have a lot of film of them on these trips to all these places. And we were watching them, about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. And it was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
How well dressed they were. I mean, it was like we couldn't wait to see what Mom was going to wear at the next place. I mean, in those days, it was a fashion show.
I just from my limited experience of having gone to the Greenbrier every once in a while, we would go to Lewisburg to see my brother, who was at the Greenbrier Military School. And so we'd go over to the Greenbrier and have lunch, and particularly if there was a tournament going on, and you could see Sam Snead, who was a West Virginian, right?
Yes. Watching him swing the club was like watching Nureyev dance. I mean, that guy had
really?
The best swing ever.
Do you play golf?
I did when I was young, but no.
Oh, okay. All right. So then,
not a game to me.
So no, not me either. So home food, fairly bland, pretty much whatever the cooks came up with. Until
later. I spent a lot of time in boarding schools from the time I was 13. Even in summer, I would go away and board as well. And I was home very, very little until I was 16, and that's when I started doing theater at Greenbrier Repertory. Summer stock.
Right.
I think Mom got a really good cook after a while. She was a black lady, and when I went back, it was the first time I really started enjoying food at home. But I was there only briefly.
Do you remember any of the food?
She was very good. It was very standard fare. I mean, it was steaks and kind of very sophisticated Southern cooking. Right.
Chicken, biscuits.
Yes.
Any grits?
They were great. Collard greens, everything was really good. She just did it well.
I've had a kind of running commentary with any number of my guests who were exposed to Southern cooking when they were growing up, and grits, biscuits, collards, almost all.
Now that I had at boarding school, and I loved grits in the morning with egg.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great.
Some butter on it, mix it up. Some people use sugar. We get
that's a little bit too much of a sweet tooth. I didn't have much of a sweet tooth when I was young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unusual kid. Was it because it wasn't
my thing?
Was it kept from you, or just you didn't care?
I mean, there were some things it was kept from me. We weren't allowed to drink Coca-Cola, and it certainly kept from me, but I never really got into it. I liked fruit.
But that was it.
But not candy, stuff like that so much.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with Lucy Arnez, whose grandmother once took one of their teeth that they lost and put it in some Coca-Cola to show them.
Oh, I know.
To show them what happens to your teeth when you drink Coca-Cola. And she said, I never drank Coca-Cola again.
Yeah, we did that experiment at school.
Oh, really?
It's also very good. Also very good if you have a bolt that you needed to get the rust and crud out of.
Really?
Clean it right out.
Really? Well, folks, right. another hint.
In those days.
Yeah.
In those days.
Yeah.
Well, in the beginning, it had cocaine in it.
Yes. Prior to our, I think, not quite so jaded
we
youth.
never did that.
No. So, and you also mentioned eating out.
Yes.
Other than peanut butter and jelly, do you remember any of your eating out experiences where you...
Oh, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Steak.
That was the thing that was the kind of de rigueur order when you went out?
Yeah, that was the thing that I remembered that everybody wanted.
And along the way, and we'll include now as we get into boarding school, any discoveries, things that you never experienced before at home and you had at either when you ate out or when you were in boarding school that you went, oh my God, where has this been all my life?
Quail. We had dove.
Oh, really?
When I was at boarding school, one of the parents who were parents of a day boarder,
Yep.
they went out on dove shoots and, kind of overshot their limit by a lot.
Right.
And we all had one, and I remember them being really cooked well, and they were delicious.
Dove.
Yeah.
As in
Dove, maybe it's quail. I don't remember, but it was local.
Yeah.
They shot it.
Locally sourced. You weren't picking.
Slaughter.
Yeah, you weren't picking buckshot out of your teeth, but it was locally shot. Right. So now you're away to school. You went to school in both South Carolina, and then you were in a school in where? Colorado?
Colorado Springs.
What was the food like in the boarding schools?
Well, the food in Aiken was really good. I remember really looking forward to eating, particularly, like I say, breakfast. I love grits and eggs and all that kind of thing. And
cafeteria style?
No. Everything at that school was very formal. You were never not in a uniform.
Oh, wow.
You wore a blue suit at dinner and study hall, and you wore a gray suit in the daytime, and then you wore whatever athletic stuff you needed to wear.
Right.
And they were all uniforms. Everything was a school required uniform all the time.
And the food service itself you were served?
It was good.
So there were...
We also slept on a sleeping porch. I guess it was like maybe 40 beds to a room.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'd have a little place where we had a dresser and a chest of drawers. And we would change there.
And then you were off to, in the morning, off to breakfast, and then school, and then whatever activities, lunch, dinner, anything that stood out in terms of the food at either of the schools?
Well, like I say, I remember them being good. We had a lot of chicken. Everything was... I was never a fan of vegetables, but I did eat them, and I just remember them it was relatively Southern fare. There was a lot of chicken and stuff. The sauces were good. I remember that.
And what about Colorado? The difference there?
No, not as good. Much more bland and there were meals that I just couldn't even eat.
Really?
Yeah.
So then when you finished boarding school, you were back home, going to Marshall, going to college?
Yeah, I went to college, and then after that, I came to New York City. I went to college very briefly, and then I said, to heck with college, I'm just going to go act.
So this was something that was a passion of yours from a relatively young age.
Yes.
Now, your mom was involved in the theater a bit herself?
There was a community theater called Community Players, and she was like a leading lady there.
Right.
One of the reasons I started acting is because I saw her in a rehearsal where she was playing Anastasia, I think, or something, and she was doing a speech about a butterfly, and I saw the butterfly on the stage.
Wow.
And I was like, how the hell did she do that?
Wow. That's a wonderful moment to experience.
Yeah.
How old were you? Do you remember?
I was 13, 14.
Mm-hmm.
After a few years, and I started really getting film work and stuff. My godmother died, and she was an educator, and so we did a thing. My mom and I did a tribute for her at the galleries in Huntington, West Virginia. I did a rehearsal with her where she was as good as anybody I ever worked with.
Really?
I mean, she was in the rehearsal. She wasn't as good when she did it live, I didn't think.
Mm-hmm.
But she was really good in this rehearsal. I mean, it was like, I was like, damn, she's talented.
Yeah.
And she was like, hadn't done anything in years.
Was this a source of frustration for her that this was not her her calling in life?
I don't know. I think maybe at some point she felt stuck with children.
Yep.
No, I think it probably at some point it bothered her.
So you think she was satisfied with?
As time went on, she was very satisfied. She really loved her life.
Yeah. And her life included, of course, not only the life with her children, but also travel.
Uh-huh.
And a very exciting kind of lifestyle.
Yes. They rented these castles in Scotland. So they traveled quite a bit. They had friends all over the place.
Wow.
And she had a very happy life once she got rid of us.
As often happens with our parents.
Yes.
Yes, this happened with my mom as well. But it had nothing to do with us. At any rate, so now you've left college, you go to New York. What was your existence like at first in New York? How were you making your way?
Well, I had just enough money to get by so that if I was smart and didn't overspend,
right,
I didn't have to work. So I worked at the theater. I joined Circle Repertory Theater Company,
which is a very, very esteemed repertory company in New York that I think is still around. I'm not sure if Circle Rep is.
I don't know.
Still there.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Marshall, the people who were there are no longer there.
Yeah.
I went there, and they needed technical people, and it was just an up and coming, just started. So I work technically all day there. So that's where, I lived and breathed there.
Right.
And as far as food went, it was Subways and whatever, pizza, whatever I could get my hands on. That was quick.
Did you cook for yourself at all?
No.
So
I ate out all the time, and I had a roommate, actually Conchata Farrell was my roommate,
sure.
Another West Virginia actor.
Yeah, wonderful actress.
Chatty would occasionally cook, invite people over and cook a breakfast.
Mm-hmm. But a sort of regulation breakfast, nothing fancy.
Oh, she would make all kinds of. She was like her parents were, real mountain people from West Virginia. Her father was, very creative. He played Christmas music to his vegetables and in his garden.
How great!
He piped in Christmas because he heard that everything grew better.
Yep.
He's one of these people who constantly was in the workshop making stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea, by the way. I'm a gardener, and it hasn't occurred to me to do that. I'm definitely going to follow up on this, by the way.
Yeah, he said they got big tomatoes, but I just thought the whole thing was really, really fun. He was a great guy, and Chatty had this part we were doing, the Ghost Sonata, and she played the cook. And she had to be on high platform, very super high platform shoes, and he made them for her because he wanted to make sure they were safe.
Wow. How extraordinary.
Yeah.
What an extraordinary man. Yeah. So other than these homemade breakfasts, you were basically eating out all the time?
Yes. I ate a lot at a place called the American Restaurant. That was amazing. They had everything. It was it was just like a diner, but it had, the most diverse kind of food. And I usually ordered the same thing. I can't even remember what it was. But every once in a while I would branch out, and they were extraordinary Greek things. And
Well, a lot of these diners were owned by Greeks, still are, for that matter. Yeah. And there are a couple of three still in the city. The Westway Diner's still there. There's one on Broadway in the 60s that I used to eat at all the time when I was working in Lincoln Center. They're up and around Upper West Side as well. There are fewer diners than there used to be, but there's still the diner food in New York City anyway is really actually quite good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's there, and they're also inhabited by a lot of actors and dancers and people who work in the theater and in music and what have you, and so who expect, a little bit better food. I don't know if we that's sort of universal, but we like good food. Anything that you remember when you were eating out all the time where well, for instance, you just said every once in a while when you'd go to this diner, you'd branch out into what? Something Greek?
Yeah. Yeah, I had some Greek meals and I tried tongue. I tried all kinds of things. They did liver rather well.
This is a thread that runs through my show as well. Yeah. Tongue and liver.
Yeah. Were things that it was a long time ago. So, being specific, and I'm not like I say, I'm not a food. Nowadays, I cook, just lately I cook everything, but my one big meal a day.
Let's get into that. Tell me about your cooking. What has spurred you on, first of all? Is it anything in particular or just the fact that you're home more?
Yeah, I mean, I do Chucky, so I don't have to go to a studio anymore. I do it in my house.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy called Mobile Mike, and they bring in a little suitcase, and I built a little stand, a place to put it, so I can stand up and I'm comfortable. I do the original vocal thing and the ADR there.
Mm-hmm. The ADR is, for our listeners and viewers who are not familiar, is when you are actually looking at a screen with your character's face on it, giving the dialogue.
And matching dialogue.
And you're matching dialogue to that.
And most of it, of course, is, is grunts and moans and breathing. And
right.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, the silly stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. So back to your cooking.
Okay, so
tell me about your cooking.
My daughter, who's an actress as well,
mm-hmm.
gets on these kicks. She gets on. She becomes very focused on one thing, and it became food. She was listening to these podcasts about glucose spikes.
Mm.
Thing that we don't know about is that when we eat, we get these spikes of glucose in our
right.
It goes up very high, and then comes down. And this over time, over a lifetime, is not good,
mm-hmm.
apparently. And so she started making these non-glucose spiking meals,
such as
you get protein. You really cut carbs out.
Entirely?
Well, I do. She does, because
mm-hmm.
that's the safest thing, but I don't think you have to. You can get a machine that you eat certain things, and then the machine will tell you how your glucose is spiking or not.
Mm.
And you keep it with you all the time, and you train your specific body to of what you can eat and what you can't eat, and so forth and so on, so that you don't close. But anyway, she started, she got, decided I had to change my diet, and she came and visited, and I did Chucky in Canada,
mm-hmm.
but I was playing it as the ghost of Chucky, which is he's very alive,
mm-hmm.
as myself, as Charles Lee Ray.
Yes.
We spent about a month side by side, and she cooked for me.
Because she was working on the show as well.
Yeah. And she cooked for me every meal I ate. Unless I had to eat on set, and then she always came with me and chose what I could eat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically you stay away from carbs and you eat different vegetables. But she had it very worked out. I make a kind of, out of cauliflower, I make a kind of mashed potatoes. It tastes exactly like mashed potatoes out of cauliflower.
Mm-hmm.
Now I cook because of my girlfriend. I cook. She likes broccolini. I cook broccolini and carrots, and I cook tofu, with onions and a little salt. Very bland, but it's great.
How do you cook the tofu? Do you stir fry it with the other?
I cook it separately. I kind of stir fry it. I cook I get the onion caramelized.
Yep.
And then I stick and then I put the tofu on and a little salt, and I kind of turn the heat up so that it dries out fast and burns a little.
Yep. Gets that little crust.
A little bit crisp.
Yep.
A little bit crisp. And then you have to watch that. And then frozen peas and the potato salad and those two things. And then an avocado, different stuff for the salad, and blueberries. Some blueberries.
In with the vegetables?
Everything's separate.
Yeah.
But it's a huge plate of food. But it isn't filling at all. I mean, you can eat a lot of it and not feel really filled up. Mm-hmm. And I feel better, way, way better.
Well, that was my next question. Has it made a difference in terms of your health?
Yeah, and it's oddly delicious. I mean, it's like we both really, really love the meal. Mm-hmm. And you can trade up things and do things a little differently, but that's kind of the basic idea.
Any animal protein?
You can. Any kind of protein you want. I try to keep it lean because of my age. But
yeah, me too.
My girlfriend's liking tofu these days. Occasionally, she just says, "I'm sorry, I really got to go have an eggplant parmesan or something."
Right. Every once in a while, you got to break out.
Yeah.
If not for your physical health, for your emotional and mental well-being.
Yeah. I have no problem eating it every night. I really, and I have no problem. And oddly enough, I have no problem cooking it. I really actually enjoy it. Mm-hmm.
So you become in your. I'm trying to think of the proper way to put it, because you and I are probably somewhere in the same kind of age range in our not senior years, in our more mature life.
That was
hey. Yes.
Sure.
You cook more for yourself. You're cooking healthier, and hopefully we're in some ways making up for the excesses of our misspent youth. When I can remember, by the way, when I was a kid, loving literally bacon that's cooked maybe about for like a minute.
Oh yeah.
So there's fully fat, all the the drippings, and then
I still eat that every once in a while.
Yeah, and then cooking my eggs in the bacon fat, and these are things that
was great.
Oh yeah,
that was great.
Yeah, and there was always a can of bacon fat on our stove or in the refrigerator that my mom kept for frying various things, and it always had the best flavor.
Yep.
And by the way, my mother ended up with very high cholesterol, but being extremely healthy despite her cholesterol. She lived until she was 96 years old. So
wow, my mom lived till she was 99.
Oh wow, whoa.
Yeah, she was like 2 weeks. No, not weeks. She was a couple of months away from 3 months away from being 100.
Hitting the big 100.
Yep.
Wow, how extraordinary! How extraordinary! So you would say that then that during your travels, and this is another question that I ask people, particularly people who work in film and who have to travel because you go on location.
Louisiana.
Yeah. Was that the place where there were some wonderful food discoveries for you when you were working there?
Well, I tell you, there was a point in my life where this couple and their kid came and actually lived with me and my wife at the time. Mm-hmm. And she was French. She was from the part of the country where, the girls all were cooking in the kitchen by the time they were 3.
Wow.
And she was extraordinary cook. Mm-hmm. My friend was into the music business and knew Bobby Charles. And Bobby Charles, was really from the bayou. I mean, seriously, from the bayou. Mm-hmm. Lived in a swamp. everybody in that area is the same way. All the women can cook.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they can really cook. And so here was this French girl who really knew how to make any kind of sauce there was.
Right.
Right off the top of her head.
Right.
They took her under her wing, and she made, I swear, Chris, the best gumbo I have ever eaten. Duck fat gumbo. She would get a duck. She would cut the fat off the duck, make the roux. You know, it was like it was surgery. It was so,
right.
You know, there was about an hour and a half of total concentration.
Just rendering the fat. Yeah.
And, you know, then put some seafood in there. And then there was some sausages. We had a great butcher in Woodstock that made great sausages. It was killer. It's the best food I ever ate.
Oh, and this was when you were where
this
you are
was
now.
At my house.
Yeah.
She lived at my house.
Right. But I'm glad you took that little detour, because that sounds wonderful, by the way.
Yeah.
But anything on your travels, that is when you were on location with any of the movies that you've made, because you've made any number of them, that where you had something and you thought, this is, where has this been all my life?
When I was in Louisiana, there were some places that we went. They knew what to do with meat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they marinated meat, and it was like nothing I ever ate. I mean, the spices in Louisiana were so delicate and so extraordinary. It was just like the place to go. It's a place, you know, there's several places in the world, France, where they really are into cooking food.
Yes.
I mean, they really, really, their cuisine is like, and Louisiana is certainly one of them.
Yes. Very unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Cajun influence is very, very pervasive, obviously, and the food is amazing.
And it's unique. And it's developed, it's mixed with Southern cooking and
French cooking as well.
French and Southern, yeah. And they really, really, really have something special.
Did you ever have a catered meal on a location that was wonderful? Every
once in a while you hit a jackpot.
Yeah.
And they hire somebody who and it can be on just a independent little shoot.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow they whoever they got to cook was just extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a couple of those, and those are just like, you know, there's a sauce, the meat is cooked perfectly. You know, the vegetables are all great, not overcooked, and you just go, oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are times when, particularly in Europe, I worked a couple of times in Spain and with Italian crews and caterers, where literally, and you're usually, if you're shooting during the day, it's the lunch that's the big meal.
Yeah.
You don't want to go back to work.
No.
My friend. Yeah. And in Spain, they served, at times, I know they do in France, they serve wine with lunch. It's a mystery to me how they ever get anything done, but they do, obviously, because they all make wonderful movies.
Yeah.
There's one final question that I always ask all my guests, and this may take some ruminating for you, given your culinary background from when you were a child, but also it ties into our adulthood as well, because food memory to me has so many kind of branches that not only come from childhood, but also from adulthood backwards. Is there anything that you can think of where you are, say, sitting and having a meal with someone and a particular taste, you come across a particular flavor, or there's a particular moment in the meal that takes you back to something that was a very vivid memory from your childhood?
Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Well, yeah.
There was a time when my girlfriend and I would every once in a while, you know, if we couldn't sleep or something, was probably the worst thing you could do, go into the kitchen and make a couple of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches until
right.
we couldn't eat them anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the peanut butter's fine because the peanut butter's got protein and fat in it, and both of which are, very good for your energy, what have you. It's the jelly that's the killer.
Yeah. Yeah.
and
it's great.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. And usually when we were kids, it was on white bread, which is another anathema.
God, yeah.
Another no-no in terms of the way we metabolize food.
Yeah, I remember white bread really well.
Oh, yeah.
I'm loving it.
Mm-hmm. Well, because it has a comforting texture to it.
Mm-hmm.
White bread does. I don't know if you know Mike Tucker.
Yes.
Mike was on LA Law for a long time, and he's a gourmet cook, wonderful cook, and he comes from Baltimore, and he says very definitively that when he makes crab cakes, you have to use Wonder Bread. You can't use breadcrumbs, whole grain. You can't. It's got to be one. There's something about Wonder Bread that is, and I'm using this as a texture word rather than it's being a word about taste. That it has a totally neutral flavor.
Mm-hmm.
That absorbs other flavors, unlike any other bread that you can use to make crab cakes. And he swears by it. He says the recipe is just, it's a wonderful recipe. Peanut butter and jelly. I'm actually thinking right now, I'm going to go home and make myself one on some whole grain bread.
Yeah,
with some preserves that don't have sugar in it, that have just the fruit. Which they make now, by the way, and there are actually a lot of them are quite good. Would you do me a favor?
Yeah.
I would love to have a recipe from you of one of your tofu dishes. All of our guests give me a recipe, and I'm putting them together ultimately into a book. But right now they're on my website.
I actually did give you the recipe for the tofu.
I'll talk to you about this a little bit more after we sign off, but I want to thank Brad Dourif so very much for being a guest today on Cooking by Heart. These memories are indelible for all of us as we grow up. We go back to peanut butter and jelly. We go back to the things that gave us comfort when we were kids, and for also talking about your adventures along the way. Brad Dourif, thank you for being with us on Cooking by Heart.
Thank you, my fellow West Virginian.
Go Mountaineers.
Yep.
All right.